businesses because of those layers. And early on last year, in the beginning of the lockdowns, they really struggled not being able to plan. And obviously they're all based around strategy and teams and rollout of plans and you know, whatever layers they've got. And actually that was just totally screwed. So actually, as a small business, it's using the skills that we naturally have as a small business or single owner business or creative entrepreneurs. That's our innate skills. And actually it's riding on those skills that we have to use anyway day to day, because it's just inbuilt. It's how we roll. We kind of have to be able to sort of multitask and to, you know, resource in various ways, in research in various ways, and be very creative and agile. So it really has been a good time, and will be a good time for us smaller, more agile, thinking outside the box businesses. So I know I've said this the last couple, but just to reiterate, and actually even more with various things that have gone on in the wider industry and world, and obviously today we'll hear more how little support as small businesses and creators we're getting through budget and whatever. It's you know, and now with a bit more of a plan of what's being rolled out, it is an exciting time. It is a really exciting time. But the point of this series was to help you to slightly change your thinking, to strengthen, but sort of open your minds a little bit and think a bit differently from a branding perspective, but also to be able to strengthen what you have if you're starting out to think in a certain way with regards to branding. And no matter what your business is or what it's going to be, or, you know, whether you're an individual creative, it's really, one, your perspective about what you're doing and your intention. And I've said again, you know, that visualization of where you're trying to get to, of where you're trying to reach as a business. And it's not really, if you can't imagine it and dream it, how the bugger's anyone else going to? And don't dream too big. And I think more than anything, I mean, I would say, as 20 years as a stylist, and I was a shop owner and brand and designer, and I think being a blagger sounds like a negative version of probably what I've done over my 25-year career, but sort of that slightly, not fake it till you make it, because you work until you make it, but it's, if you believe it and project that belief, then other people will absorb that energy and believe you. I mean, even sort of funny stories along the way of fashion weeks and as a freelancer, I was in a magazine in the very early stages of being a stylist, but generally as a freelancer, unless you work for like Vogue's, you're not thought of that highly in fashion weeks. So we always had to blag it a bit, and I am quite good at it. As a stylist, kind of have to be, but I always was dressing a bit crazy and kind of, you know, whatever. I've painted heads and all sorts of stuff, or little black bobs or whatever. And to be honest, if I used to just walk to the front row like I was meant to be there, and sat there like I was whoever I was meant to be, I never ever got kicked off. And I think it's that whole giving out that certain energy and presence as a brand as well, that you have that confidence and that understanding, and it's not faking it. But even if you're feeling a bit unsure and insecure about who you are and what you're doing, once with this sort of stuff that we're going through of, you know, sort of really reevaluating and honing down your values and your spirit, and then sort of today we're going to, and next week we'll talk a lot more about customer. It's the more you, sorry, that's really bad, isn't it? The more that you know that, you will be able to not blag it, but kind of wing it if you need to in circumstances, which also gives you the agility. So, and, you know, even from a styling perspective, you know, I worked for a few years with Trini and Susanna, and it's all very rules based. And for me, it's kind of know some of the rules and principles, but so that you can then break them to make them work for you. And that's the same, I still would apply that from a styling perspective when I'm still teaching on that front, or advising. I do like, it's more vintage for me now, but I still think that, you know, understand who you are and what you've got, and then it means you can play around with it. But it's having that understanding and foundation first. And as a brand, when I talk about sort of this like winging it, blagging it, that's not knowing what you're doing, but I think it's understanding who you are, so that in circumstances it gives you that confidence that sometimes we lack, because often we're on our own. You don't have big teams to be bouncing off. And actually, it's, you know, it's why we do a lot of the mentoring, because it is really hard and really tough doing it on your own, and you've not got that validation internally. So then when you come to the outside world, to the external world, it's almost the worst place to try and find validation from a personal level and a business level, because it's not always that honest, and it's not always going to give you that depth of validation that you might need to give you the confidence to project what you need and want to project. So I think the more that you get this foundation right, it's just going to give you that that security of just knowing who you are, and the underpinning with these values that we've talked about. It's almost like you get insecure or worried about decision making, you just go back to those values, and it just gives you, it almost gives you that rock to go back to, the real sturdiness within the business. And just to do a little recap, I'm not sure if there's anyone else now that's joined that hasn't been in the last couple. We've talked a lot about values, and sort of in a very traditional branding sort of speak and teaching, they talk about values, but from Slingshot and how we sort of work, it's very much the sort of pillars of your business. It's those 4 cornerstones, can be 6, but 4 cornerstones of the business that literally create the sort of answers to everything almost. You know, if you are brands, companies, why? Okay. Yeah, I'll go through that in a sec, but just to sort of a little bit of a recapping. So yeah, the values are just the underpinning strength. So we've gone through a little bit in the last 2 sessions that I would recommend, if this is the first one you've come to, once they're up on YouTube, to watch them. Like I say, I'm going to recap a little bit just so that you're not sort of unsure where we're going to here next. But we've kind of gone through a little bit, and actually I might ask again those that have been in if they've done any further work on that. The first week homework was to sort of brainstorm around the values of your business, even though people sort of think they know what they stand for and what they give a shit about. It's actually, once you start really thrashing that out, you know, we really kind of explore it a bit deeper. And quite often, you know, even I do a questionnaire, one whenever I take on a new client, but actually a lot of the creatives and influencers we look after, I treat them like a brand, and I make them fill out the brand questionnaire that we use with clients. And some of it at the end of the questionnaire is some silly questions that, well, it seems silly answering it, but actually gives us so much information, kind of things like, and maybe actually I might even do this either on this one or the next one. It's things like, if your brand was a car, what would it be? If your brand was a perfume or smell. And it sounds silly, but do you know what? There's so much information we get out of it. Honestly, it's like, there's so much information. And so there's all a color, if you're a color, maybe we'll do it as a little quiz this week or next week, because it is really interesting. But you need to be able to answer these questions. It doesn't matter, and it's not you personally, it doesn't matter. But it's then in any circumstance, you just know the answer. When it comes to designing your website, when it comes to working out your messaging, when it comes to looking at your content for social, when you know your values and then the spirit, you know the answers to all of it. When we do a brand guide, we create a document for a business that just has all of that, from obviously the messaging, which goes into the marketing, but the spirit, the character, the personality, the values, the customer, and all of that. And it's almost like an idiot guide of your brand. And to be honest with you, I still look back at Slingshot's brand guide, even though we created it, just because you need to just keep making sure that you're walking in the path of your own sort of brand values and integrity, so that you don't go off course. Because it's really easy when you've got all these macro influences, and especially now the biggest one being pandemic, as well as the micro, it's very easy to get taken off course and to get swayed in different ways and get influenced by what else is going on around you. And the more you can stick to your own sort of path and lane, the stronger you'll be. And I think if you were to think now of brands that you trust, maybe just even try and think of like one brand that you know what they are, you know what they stand for, you trust them, and you just know what you're going to get from them. You know, it's quite often the way with supermarkets. You know that if you're going to go to M&S, you get that. If you go to Sainsbury's, you get that. More recently, more like the Aldis and Lidl. You know, you kind of just know where you stand with certain brands. If they stick very closely to their own sort of foundations, they're not all brilliant at doing that, and they get a bit confused because they get so influenced by their competition or the other influences outside. And it's really important to know who your competition are. It's really important to know what's coming up as far as predicted external factors. Then there's unpredicted, like things like the pandemic that we can never have planned for. But building agility in the business, it means that we can kind of we can ride with it. You know, we can kind of, and a lot of that's about mindset. When the first lockdown happened last March, obviously there was a lot of people completely flummoxed because they just were like, oh shit, how this is just wasn't in the plan. And people went from having a year plan to having to go to like a week plan. When we were doing the workshops that we ran last year, and the content for us, for clients, we literally had to go to a week or 2 week schedule of like not being able to plan any further, as everyone did. And I think, but that is a lot about expectations and about agility, into sort of a mental agility. If you get very set that this is the way things are going to be and you plan them a certain way, if they go off course, you're a bit buggered mentally because you're not expecting it, and you kind of, it's even, sorry to keep throwing in analogies, but even when it comes to like labor and having children, you know, the problems come when people have a very set labor plan, and if it suddenly, I was like, shit, something else happens, they tense up and they can't dilate, and it makes labor very difficult because you're hitting against a wall. But if you're a bit open and a bit more soft and fluid in general, figuratively and literally, certainly when it comes to having children, but you're able to ride with it. And I think as a business, if you keep a fluid mind that has knowledge and intention, you're able to ride with what happens. But if you get very set with plans, and I think that's one thing this year has done for all of us, is it's like you just can't plan very far into the future. But what you can plan is who you are as a brand. You can stick with that. Your values don't change. You might adapt them depending on how you evolve over the years, but that doesn't change. So if you have that really strong and sturdy, even if all this other shit's going on around, you know who you are, and it's a matter of how you as a business work within these circumstances, rather than when they're thrown at you, it completely jars everything. So the strength that you have in your business will have a massive impact on how you're able to ride challenges, adversity, and sort of external factors, even around customer behavior. I mean, with customer behavior, there's a lot that you can learn and know based on having a really deep understanding of who they are, which, like I say, we'll talk a bit more about customers maybe today, if not on next week. But you can know a lot when it comes to your customers, but as we all know, they might get to your shopping cart, and whether or not they click yes, there's lots of different reasons why. It might be something you're doing, like you've not made the customer journey easy. It might be they've decided actually they don't want a skirt now for that wedding, they're going to wear a pair of trousers, or there's lots of different reasons why they may or may not make that final decision. But what you can do is, one, make sure that you know that you've done as much as you can to create that journey, but also and the customer experience based on your knowledge of those customers. And you can stay consistent and strong in your brand and your brand values and your brand spirit, and that they know that whatever whatever you're doing from your side, it's consistent. You know, branding is about consistency and building trust. And it's about, I mean, I've said, you know, it's not a tangible thing, but it becomes tangible once it turns into assets and experiences that, you know, become memories, become something that people feel, as well as eventually, if it's a product-based business, something they can actually touch. So there's a lot that you can ensure, but knowing that, but having a mindset of being open as well as structured, then it means that you can be very agile. And so much in life is about expectations. And I think that applies to every situation, both personal and business. It's about what you expect and what a customer expects. And if they know you as a brand, they come to know what to expect from you. That's why you have to be consistent. Because if you don't continue with consistency and you suddenly do something that's totally off brand, it throws them. And because there are so many brands out there, and there are so many brands that are doing different things, you'll find that the ones that are very like schizophrenic in their behavior as far as how they are responding to things, it becomes much harder for customers to both relate and trust. And trust builds up consistency in sales and conversion as well, whether you're a service-based business or product. So it's that consistency that you provide that then creates consistency in their behavior, because they then respond to your consistency by continuing to shop with you or continuing to have a relationship with you and be in your world that I've talked about, you know, the world of your brand, that is, you know, that we're not selling products. You know, we don't talk about a nice dress or a really good personal styling service or a photography, whatever it is. We talk about the spirit and essence of your brand. You sell the brand in all of your content and messaging. It's not selling your products. And if they buy into that and trust the way you act and the way it makes them feel, oh, by the way, they're going to buy a shitload of stuff from you. It will always turn into conversion because you built trust. And if your knowledge of those customers is based on facts and earned sort of research, then you will be able to understand their predictability and unpredictability, and you will be able to adapt with that too. So it's kind of, it's on from both sides. It comes from a really sturdy, strong place that allows you to be really soft and sort of floaty or weavy about how you behave, but you have to have that strength in the first place. And that comes from your understanding of yourself as a brand and then your understanding of your customer. And those two things together, when they become aligned, is where the magic happens, and then the conversion. But we want to we want to build the brand first, that will then, you know, build that audience. Now, of course, you know, we've talked a bit about, I think I said a little bit about a sort of gap in the market. Now, of course, you can create a brand and it might be lovely, but if you've not done your research about the markets, then you might have a lovely brand that actually is just not right for that time, or there's not an audience for. So you do have to keep that in mind too, and keep looking at what's going on and keep understanding your customers' needs so that you can keep improving what you do as far as creating the best customer experience for them. And that's from the products they buy, how they go on a journey with you, whether it is through a pop-up shop, whether it is online, whether it is through the content that you put out there that makes them feel a certain thing. And the feelings that you want them to feel are based on your values, the things that you give a shit about. And then the spirit and personality that, you know, as I said last week, I'll bring the slides up again, the spirit and personality is the attitude based on your values. So I'm just going to very quickly bring up the slide that's just got, let me bring the, sorry, Let me just get the right one. Okay, so I'm just going to quickly get the values one. I was going to go into the customer stuff, but I'm just going to recap on the values just for those that weren't here, and then I'm going to just go back. This is a very quick snippet because I don't want to spend too much going over this because there's so much to try and get through rather. So let me just share this one with you for a sec. For those that didn't, how to define your brands. It's what's the deal breakers for you, you know, analyzing the alignments, research around, and your personal values can be a part of that. Like I say, I think for those that haven't been in the last ones, have a look at the last sessions. But I don't know whether there is anyone that was here for the last couple that has thought more about their values, and if they've just wanted to, if there's anyone who wants to be brave and chat and just say about whether it's evolved now a week on, and whether you've kind of further I don't know, investigated or secured in your mind what they might be. I mean, when I go through this process with people, it can take like weeks, you know, we're kind of, it's not expect, you don't have to have them completely secured by the end of this sort of 4 series, but if your mind's in the right place. But has anyone done any more work and felt like the time as well and sitting on it a bit has helped and want to share sort of what they got to last week and now this week? And then we'll sort of talk about sort of the mood boards and Pinterest that was the homework from last week. Lisa, you...
No, all I was going to say is Sarah and I, because we're working together, so we did write down some brand values, and as I said last week, that obviously we're going to keep changing those and keep going back to them because we're we're setting up our website as we speak. But what I thought was really nice thing to do is to put that on our website. So maybe the last page of our website have our brand values, so they're there for everybody to see. So we really want to work on them so that they do represent us, you know, in the best way possible. And like you say, you can keep going back to them again and again and make sure you're aligning yourself with those values. And then we did a little bit of a Pinterest board, didn't we, Sarah? we did work on a Pinterest board. It's not the final thing, obviously, but it's a good project to sort of get you thinking. And
it's quite difficult to find images that sum up your spirit and your values, but we tried. I'm looking at it now, actually. It's all right.
Well, I'm going to just, whilst we're doing this, I'm just going to Fee, just out of interest, Fee, what's your business, or what's your
I design folding fans.
Okay.
So like,
oh, cool.
Ooh,
Oh, they're funky. I like it.
So at the moment, I started a couple of years ago. I've just been selling on an Etsy, bits of hobbyist really, but I want it to become more of a
proper business.
Proper business, really.
You are a proper business. Well, you are a proper business, but it's quite often when we do mentor it's going from that it being a side hustle to it being what you do as your day to day, and that's a big transition.
And expand into other sort of printed goods or hand painted, unprinted. So, but it's just such a leap, and it's just me doing it on my own. And as probably most people here, you know, you start your own. It's quite overwhelming what I've got to do, but anyway.
It is, but and this is why things like this, and then in general, like with a lot of the sort of mentoring and business coaching stuff that we do as an agency, it is really hard doing it on your own, and it is very overwhelming. And I think the one thing that I would say, and that's why with this, I've sort of said, whilst we were talking about this stuff, don't work on anything else to do with the business, just focus on this. And part of it is taking you on a bit of a process that you just focus on one thing at a time, because otherwise, I mean, to be honest with you, I've had similar conversations with my husband say about some other, we've got renovations and we're buying another, and I'm just like, stop thinking about everything in one go. Like, it's like, stop it. Like, just let's one thing and then one thing, because otherwise you just can't do anything. You get fuzzy about everything and it becomes very, very overwhelming. And I think, and then it means there's no space for anything. And I think with a business in general, and especially when you've not got big teams doing all these different things, it's really important to be able to go on a very sort sort of structured journey that gives you, again, scope to sort of move around. But there is a bit of a process to go through. With the branding, it's fine if you've been going a while. I've done branding like this for clients that have been going 10 years, for however long. You can do it retrospectively and strengthen. But if you're at the early stages, it's a really good chance to really get it really strengthened, so that you're not just someone that sells a product that happens to be fans, but actually you're a brand that could be anything. Then the brilliant thing about setting up a brand rather than a product, service or business, as far as you're thinking really, because obviously you are still making products or giving a service, is once you have a brand and your values secure, and the spirit and the personality and then the messaging and the customer base, people relate to you and buy into what you're doing because of who you are as a brand, and they connect with your values. You find your customers based on them having aligned values. If that's the case, and you then can do anything. Like you could bring out all sorts of products. You know, it could be shoes that got prints on it, could be, because you'll know who your customers are, and as long as it's still within your brand values and within the world of what you do, for any of you, it actually, what it does, rather than restrict you, it gives you more freedom, because it's, you know, it's like, it doesn't seem weird that suddenly, you know, whatever, I was to bring out a range of filofaxes, for example. I'm not going to, but for example, because if it sits within whatever that I'm doing, or the values or whatever about planning or whatever, you can do whatever you want. It gives you so much freedom to diversify as product bases or brand extensions of what you do. So the values will evolve and will strengthen. Then the visualization of that, I think certainly as creatives, but in general, it can be done for any type of business. Being able to visualize what your brand looks like as a feeling is really important. You know, because quite often for creatives and creative business, when you ask them to do mood boards, it becomes about the product. It's a mood board for what you're going to design, rather than a representation of who your brand is and what it feels like. And it is quite difficult to create a feeling through images in a way. But so this, let me just move that down. So this was, I showed this last week, but I'm just going to flash it back up again. Let me put your, how did that happen? I don't know how that did. How did that go that way? Move it up there. So this is Slingshot's spirit, brand spirit, inspired by the values, which is being dynamic, synergistic, creative, and focused. So these are images not of anything to do with what we actually do, but it creates the feeling of who we are. So, you know, the whole dynamic, oh, easy for you to say, being dynamic. So it brings that to life. And then, you know, sort of our attitude defined by our values. So it might be an odd word, it might be the mood of an image, it might be colours, it might be quite abstract, playful. So all of that, it's the kind of, you know, playfulness, expressive, ironic, authentic. So that's ours. Obviously, it's, you know, everyone's different, but it's finding imagery that represents that feeling. And it can take a while. You know, we did various mood boards just to come to those images. So this was what I set as homework last week. So I don't know whether anyone's got that they wanted to share their screen, that they had got anything they wanted to show, or if not, if they wanted to talk about how that was doing that before I kind of move on any further to the next bit.
Hi.
Hi, how you doing?
Good, thank you. Thanks so much. Again, super helpful.
No worries.
Yeah, I did the mood board, and I have to say the most difficult part about it was the difference between brand values and the brand spirit.
Okay.
I felt like that was very difficult, and it is quite difficult. I don't know, probably for everyone to do, like get like a whole feeling out of this. But yeah, I did one mood board for brand values and one for brand spirit. But still trying to find what's the difference, to be honest, like for myself.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, don't worry about the Pinterest board being quite so much about the values, because the values are the words and the meanings that are underpinning. the brand spirit and personality is more about the attitude and the feeling. So the Pinterest board, so we'll concentrate on that, because it's you know, well, I mean, on the ones I showed you of I mean, there's two that I showed you there of ours, and one was attitude and personality and spirit. So the spirit is that feeling, and the personality is more about the attitude. But it's fine, as I said, just do one board for now. It's fine.
Okay.
That basically creates the feeling of your brand. The values are those sturdy rocks, the pillars that are going to underpin. And what I've said about values in the previous weeks is that they're what, you know, the deal breakers, what defines you, what you give a shit about. But they are rock solid. You know, that they use every which way. You know that as a business, you can live by them from every level, internally as a business, the way you behave, the way you deal with your customers, the way you deal with your staff, the way you deal with every element, what it looks like, what it feels, every which way. You could take anything you've designed, everything has to go back to those values. And if you're saying as a brand like we are that, you know, you're dynamic and you are creative, even down to if I'm designing a dress, you need to be able, it needs to inspire your design process as well. You know, that everything has to be, not every item has to be completely, for example, dynamic and creative, but it does needs to come from that perspective. You know, it needs to be, it really helps the design process when you underpin the values. And this is the thing, you know, quite often people go straight into the design process of within a brand and they create the products and then they jump to PR because they want the promotion. And they forget about this really sturdy foundation bit, and that's okay because it is what everyone does. I mean, I don't know that I've known it very different really with any small business I've kind of worked with, because it's just natural. And to be honest with you, even big businesses, you know, I guess less so just because they've got more layers and structure and teams. But as a small business, one, we don't have the time and resources. The difficult thing, and for us as a business as well, is people understanding branding and the value of it, because quite often the value doesn't come till down the line. We've done big documents for clients, actually really more than once, and we've gone through a few months of a process with them, created this really hardcore, amazing brand Bible, and they love it. They just haven't got a bloody clue what to do with it if they've not gone on the journey enough as far as their mindset changing. We can't hand documents to someone, and it's not like copying your homework and here you go, it's been done. It's a process. It's a mindset change, branding. You have to go on the journey. And if you've not taken yourself and your brand on that journey, then you won't get it. And I've had clients, and I don't know if I've said this or not, but we've done a project and then maybe stopped working with them after that, you know, period is finished or whatever, and they've not known how to use it. And then maybe like there's one brand, a couple of years down the line, you're like, they've got it now. They've now seen it, and you can see them behaving and what they're putting out and the content or the messaging. And they're like, and they realize how it can impact the business. You have to be thinking, even though I'm saying we can't plan that far in advance now, as far as activity, you can plan how you're going to behave. It's just that you then agile about the sort of the variance within it as far as what goes on in the world, and, you know, as customer demands evolve and change, and you know, how our behavior and lifestyle changes. But you can plan how you are going to respond to things, and you can, you know, that you can know, and it's quite hard in general for people to grasp the concept of something that initially is so intangible and very conceptual, whereas products, you can see and feel them, and it's like, I've done something, I've created something, how great I am, and what a fabulous thing, and I'm sure there's loads of customers that want what I do, and then loving the idea of Lady Gaga wearing your dress, because you can see that and it gives you instant validation. But actually, as far as a business model and conversion of sales and any commercial element of building your brand financially, and building your brand as far as the potential of what you can do and how you can expand, those things are quite short-lived. You know, you'll be, whatever I'm saying, I know not everyone's necessarily in fashion, might be jewelry, you might be in the creatives in general. It's, the products will come and go, they're not here forever. You will keep creating new products, but the brand's here for as long as you have your business. And that's what you kind of need to think. And so why wouldn't you work on that the most? You know, like, you're all creative and good at what you do. That's why you're even here and have the intention to keep building what you do as a business. So that we already know. But building yourself outside of just that product and that restriction of the product is what's going to give you the best chance of still being here. Even if we have another pandemic or another phases this year, you'll be so strong that even though, you know, obviously complete behavior change as far as how people are shopping and consuming, and even for, you know, for LDC having to change and be more virtual, and for all of us, and for me teaching more online or for guiding people, you know, that is fine. That bit we can be fluid about and we can keep adapting. But who you are, that doesn't change. So why wouldn't we spend the time on that? So you know, I've said, even if you only come to this one, or if you've been to all, or if you can listen to the others and come to the next one, it's about, for me, it's about mindset changing. You know, it's not about, I'm not here to teach you how to design. You know how to do that. You know, I'm not here to teach you how to be a creative. You know how to do that. But it's how to think like a brand and speak like a brand, and rather than someone that, because if you're just promoting and selling products, there's always going to be a stage and an element of desperation around it, because you need those customers, you need that sale, because it's very transactional, and that's what it is. Whereas when you talk and act like a brand, it becomes much more, you're selling a feeling, and you're selling a connection, and you're selling, you know, well, you're not even selling. You know, the best way to market is not to sell, and it becomes a by the way, you know, and they're like, well, yeah, I love what you're doing. I want something of it. I'll buy the keychain even if I can't afford the dress. You know, they want to be a part of it. So creating a world that people want to be a part of is going to be a way for you to build something that is more indestructible, and gives you the scope to do, you know, whatever it is that you you want to do with your business. So I think I don't know whether anyone wants to share their Pinterest boards, or whether
Could I share mine? Oh,
just share it. Let's share it as an example. And I think what I will do is I think at the end of this, I'm going to give you the homework for some of the customer stuff, and I'm going to go through it a bit more next week. It's all going on here. It's like Piccadilly Circus. Let me
can you see it?
Yes, let me. Yeah, we can see. Can everyone see?
I did too now with brand value and brand spirit, but obviously that's
no worries.
True.
And then so also we talked a little bit about some of those sayings and quotes that almost become kind of indicative of how you speak. It might not be something you're saying all the time, but like for us, some of those little sayings were like go hard or go home, which became quite figurative and literal in the end. Me being the go hard, my business partner that's now left, but well, she was a go home. Yeah, so the rebel in me will never die. I think that's a great saying. I'm picking up a vibe, certainly, of
that's good.
the anarchist. Yeah, I mean, I guess the thing is with this, and obviously it's a starting point, because obviously a lot of this is sayings rather than just sort of things or whatever. But I think, well, I mean, I don't know what anyone else, if so, rather than me say, if from anyone else looking just even at these very few images, what's their view of what they pick up from this, rather than Sarah saying, does someone else want to suggest what they feel they get from the vibe of this.
Yeah, it's really anarchic, definitely. Yeah, it's quite
and
quite strong, isn't it?
And I would say, without you having put too much of that, and I'm imagining it might actually be where minimalist punk, is that fair? Minimalist punk, is that a good synopsis, Sarah?
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
I think that, I think that it's a really good starting point. I think that for sure, I think even these saying, that's why it is really good, like these little quotes or little words that just really sum it up, because sometimes we can't find those words to sum up what we feel we stand for, but actually, that's why Pinterest is great for that. But what I'd like you to do with this to take it to the next stage is just, you've got some good wording there, and you might find more, which is fine. You can fill this out as broadly and full as you want, because and actually, to be honest, the great thing as well with doing these Pinterest boards is it also becomes potential content for social media, So, I use a lot of like quotes and stuff from Pinterest within both business and personal, because it just sometimes sums up what you're saying rather than it having to be you saying it all the time. And I think, some of these quotes and stuff might be really useful for you for social. So I think build that out, but also I want to see a bit more, more images that could be around color, it could be around shape and form, not physical, and I'm not talking about clothing, but just, it might be within that. I can get a bit now of where you're going with who you are, but I want you to take that to the next stage.
Mm-hmm.
So, sort of build it out further, and it's kind of within sort of the values and the spirit and the words that kind of, so we've said already, minimalist punk, I think, was a great sort of roundup of it, but even within that, so if that is part of you're around equality and inclusivity and that side of things, so it's like, what else does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
What further, rather just the words to go with it. But I think that's a great start, and I think just continue to build out with further images that kind of bring around the rest of what you do and stand for.
Thank you
Great.
so much.
No, not at all. Does anyone else want to share whilst we're looking at that? Let's see if anyone. The rest of the workshops will be up by Friday. So for those that haven't seen the first couple, I would say if you're able to watch those before next week, if you're going to come, then it would be just really useful, because I think that you will get to it might give you a bit of a chance to work a bit more on that early stuff. And like I say, the main point for me, we're together for an hour each week. So, I can't teach you everything in that. And I think the more important thing for me is around mindset changing and just thinking in a certain way, rather than just, I think as a small business, quite often it's like, right, as I say, like, what your product is. Okay, what's the practical things? I need to make a website. I need to do some social media. I've got to have my contract kind of templates. I need to have invoice templates. I need to have some business cards. I need to have, and you get very practical and functional about the things that you need to actually physically build a business. And so often this bit, the intangible bit, gets left out. So I think, and especially whilst we are still for a bit in lockdown, it is kind of perfect timing. This last year has been brilliant timing for people to work on some of that foundation. And I think even now, in this early stage of us starting to get out, we hope still, once they open the schools, that doesn't change. But, it's a really brilliant time it's always a good time to work on the foundations of your business, always, it's never a bad time to do that. And I think that the more you can be doing that and sort of swatting up a little bit on what's needed, the better. So I'm just going to do a quick few minutes just to sort of talk a little bit more then about the customer, just so I can give you a little bit of homework on that, and then we'll talk a little bit more deeply on that next week, because after the values and the sort of spirit and personality of your brand, getting the foundations right, the other big bit is the customers. Because it's all right, who you are, but you then need to have an understanding of who your customers are, so that you're not, and actually that there are real customers that exist that have a demand for what you're doing, because otherwise it becomes a business that is that has no legs, and then it's not viable. So, you know, the two things have to be there. You have to have the great idea that has that strength and sort of the building blocks around it, and in that process, it's understanding who your customers are, and if they exist and align and want you, and then that's then where you build out the product side of things and the services, and then the marketing. You know, that's kind of and if there aren't customers, like, well, I don't know who would want it, then it just means there's not a demand. And it's a really important thing to do in the early stages, but also to continue to. And then even once you identify who your customers are, it's really important to continue to get to know them and understand them. And even the big businesses don't do enough of that. And actually, the one thing that's happened out of this last year is it's given a really good opportunity for brands to be able to get really much more connected to their audience. Though so much of it is on here or on bloody social, it does mean that there's a really good chance to get just really closely connected, ask questions. I did a lot of lives during that first lockdown with various experts that we have, but got people involved, and we did little brand clinics on Instagram Live and got people to pop on and sort of almost be able to be there and ask questions. And even for people with celebrities don't really exist now, because they've become real people that are going through the same thing. And even like on, you know, you get these big, even like will.i.am's been doing Zooms where his audience have been on a Zoom with him and be able to chat to him and all this kind of stuff. It's like we've become so close. But what it means is you can actually just ask real questions of your audience and get answers. You know, we always say, you know, ask good questions and you get good answers, and don't ever presume anything when it comes to your audience. Ask, you know, why would you try and guess what they want? Why do people design a collection without understanding what the customer actually wants that season? Or no, and just trying to get a bit of picture of, you know, what's going on in their life and how their lifestyle has evolved. Why would you guess? It's like, it's the difference between you making sales or not. So, you know, social media can be a ball ache, and if it's not your thing naturally, then it can be a bit of a beast that needs feeding and a bit of a chore. But if you are smart about it, stick within your values of how you behave on it and what you put out, but use it as a really good tool to connect with your audience, then it can be really invaluable. But understanding who they are is the first thing. So within the whole world of sort of the customer discovery, it's identifying the potential customer groups. Rarely is there one lot of customers that are going to be aligned with you. What does happen is, though, you might find a number of different customer types, but they all share the same values. So I'm going to just share my screen. I'm going to, for now, just show you little snippets, and then I might next week share with you a whole section from a project we've done for a client, just so that I can move that. Go away. Where's it gone? Oh, okay. I don't know how. There we go. Move that way. Sorry, I'm messing around with this toolbar. I'm just trying to move off the bloody page. There we go. So for each client or for each brand, so for us, there's different types of groups of clients. So we've got the small entrepreneur creatives that we might offer a certain level, that might engage with us on a certain level. We work with big brands that might, different types of businesses. But what they share is the like-mindedness with us and the values, so that they want to be in our world and engage with us on whatever level, but they might be different types of customers. But they share a similar spirit and personality on whatever level, and values. The values are, again, what connects all of them. So this was for a client, and we kind of, quite often, rather than your customers being grouped by demographic, we find generally that, well, quite often it's much better to do it either by lifestyle, by spirit, by tribe, rather than just this age, they live there. And actually, for me and for us, it's become much less about age. It's become much more about spirit and about lifestyle. So this was for a concept store that we did this, and this was one group. And what we do, which again I will ask you to do, and it's whether it's now or after the next one, because I'll give you some homework for even after we've finished this, is it's then putting it into images and words, each customer group. So this particular customer, and I don't know if I've only got one in here, or yeah, this is one. Yeah, there's one example. So for this particular client, we had Scandi Art House as one group. I think we had the Dalstonites as another group, which were more kind of quite funky, a bit more less smooth around the edges, a slightly different attitude that was a bit more rebellious. And then we had the crafty sort of, I can't remember we called them, the sort of more crafty sort of group of the customers. We then had the design-led, sort of more arty, and then we had the fashionistas that were more expressive and sort of fashion-based. But what they all shared was the link of values with this client. So these Scandi Art House, as we defined them, it's up to you. The name can change, it doesn't really matter. But it might be, for example, you've got the sort of, you might give it a name, but the sort of the working mums, for example, might be one group. There might be the kind of like the sort of the sort of business, kind of hardcore business women, for example, or men or people. And what the differences is for you as far as understanding them is around their behaviour. So they might share the same values, but it's around their behaviour. And what that will help you is to understand their needs, as far their requirements as far as any product or service, how they will behave as far as marketing and messaging and engagement, and what the customer journey should be. So once we kind of define this, again, we'll do a whole Pinterest board and then create a mood board to sum up that group around them as people. And then we also do a lifestyle one. This isn't a standard sort of global standard branding thing, but I'm teaching you how we do it as a process from a sort of creative agency perspective. And then we sort of do a bit of a lifestyle. So that might be where they go, where they hang out, what they're into as far as their life. It might be around food and travel. And what that helps you with is understanding what else is in their life outside of you. And when you do that, one, you know where they might be and how to sell to them, but also you just gauge more of an understanding around their lifestyle and how they speak and feel. So one's who they are and one's how they, what they do and how they sort of act. Then what we also do is then put that into words. But it's less about, they're this age, they go, I always do a bracket, and we kind of have to put that in because clients kind of quite like to have something in there. But obviously this is ridiculously broad, because you can have Scandi Art House type people that could be 20 or could be 60. It's about a style and about a lifestyle. It's really not about the age, it's the spirit. And like I say, that's kind of really more, this was based on tribes. So these were tribes that we used to define the customer groups for this client. And I'm conscious of time, so I'm going to scan through this just so I can give you homework. And then I'm going to go much more in depth around this as far as how you think and act and be agile as a brand, and especially evolving, going through this pandemic. Because if you know who your customers are and who you are, you can survive any of this. Whether you find them, whether it's an online virtually or whether it's in real life, you'll understand that, and it becomes almost like a boxing sparring game that you keep finding each other, and then you're moving around, and it becomes this thing that can go anywhere. But once you know those two things, then you can be that agile. So for the questions that we kind of ask, much more how they act, how they feel, how they speak. And then we always do, and don't worry about this particularly now, is then for a client, we will always do like a list of hashtags that are relevant to that group, because it's different within the marketing. Now, people often say, is it then not confusing if you're trying to market to a Scandi Art House type person and then a fashionista? Well, the thing that links them is the values. So they will still connect with the messaging and the imagery, but it might just be at different times you focus slightly depending on some of the products you're trying to sort of promote, or events you're doing or messaging that you're putting out there, that at different times there might be more of a focus on one or the other. Because it might well be that actually, again, sort of going to more traditional sort of marketing head, that one group is kind of like your cash cow. One group is the one that's your bread and butter, that will bring more regular sales and will be more consistent. There might be other groups that will buy into what you do and align with it. They might just not be that regular as far as being a customer. So they're in your world, but as far as engagement, they might be less frequent. And there might be one group that potentially have a lower disposable income. So from a sales perspective, they're going to engage on a certain level, but you might know that that group really love the coffees and the whatever that you do. They just might not go out for the meal but they still want to engage with you and be in your world and hang out in your world. It's just that they might not. So that's partly how that helps. It's, you can still mark, but it's good to know the hashtags that are going to help you to speak to each of those groups. What I'm going to do, you've got a quick flash of a vintage image there. Let me just stop sharing the screen. What I will do, I think, next week, because like I say, this has been quite fluid in that it's trying to work out what I didn't want this series to be is something that you just listen to me for 4 weeks for an hour, and then you've got to go away and do something about it afterwards, that you're on a bit of a process during, because for me, it means that you can action it. Coming to these classes isn't working on your business, it's learning about your business. The working on your business is a bit after, once you absorb what I've told you and you use it. People get a little bit, they're like, oh, it's okay, I'm working on my business, I'm in a webinar, I'm in a workshop. I'm like, no, that's the learning bit. Then you're going to action it, and that's the bit that's working on your business. The two are really important, but what I wanted with this to be something that you're actually sort of half actioning whilst you're in it, and it means that you're not going to go away and just think, oh, that was a really nice, she was nice, that was nice, and then whatever, it might sit there on one day, you might remember something, but actually that it becomes productive. So what I want you to do, those that haven't been in until now, I want your homework is to watch those once they're out on Friday. And if you have chance to start to think and put down your values, and if you have time and want to, you could have a go on the Pinterest board as well. That was from the second session. The values are really important because it's about defining it. I'm not expecting you to have them nailed, but I want you to do the brainstorming around it. And I want you to have started to go on that mental journey. The Pinterest board is just very good, especially if you're creatives, that it's that visual part of the brain. And actually, we don't often connect that whole idea of the pictures and the words together. And actually, that's the trick with social media. You can put great images up, but you need the good words to go with it. That's the tone of voice. That's how you speak. And the two together become how it feels to the customer, not just the images. It really pisses me off now when you see like great image and like, yeah, but what were you trying to say? Put something there that you don't have to like idiot guide explain it, but I don't know what you were feeling about that. I want to know, that's a nice image, but I want to understand what you feel about it, or how you connect with it, or what you think about it, or what you were trying to say to me, because that's the bit then I can connect with. Otherwise it becomes wallpaper. It's like, that's nice, that's lovely, but you don't have an emotional engagement to it in the same way. So for this week, I want you to think about the potential customer groups. That's all I want you to do at the moment. So just start, again, it's brainstorming. Who are these potential groups? Now you might sort of know that, obviously aesthetically, if you've already got a collection that's designed, or a product that's designed, or a service you offer, the thing you want them to buy into. But I want you to go back from that, forget that to begin with. In the same way that it's the same part of your brain, the same thinking around what your values are. It's like, who are they, or who could they be? Now, if you've been going for a year, 2 years, 3 years, however long, you've built up a customer base. So you know who your actual customers are. But what I want you to do is think about that, but in some ways forget it a little bit and think about how they could be. Because I think if you concentrate too much on who your customers are at the moment, it'll prohibit you thinking about the potential for who else there could be, or who there should be. I have a girl that I'm mentoring at the moment, and she has a sustainable fashion brand, and she's got a customer base that's a certain thing, and it's really difficult to sort of, well, that's who my customers are. Like, no, that's who's buying into your product at the moment. But who else could it be? There's all these other groups of people. So it's thinking about those people that will engage with your world, your values, what you do. You know, you said you're a minimalist anarchist, punk, you know, whatever. Who are those types of people? You know, is it the sort of older Vivienne Westwood types that are kind of, you know, even more principled, have got more time to give to that spirit because they don't have other things that are interfering in their sort of sphere in the same way? They don't have the functionality shit that we all get bogged down with. So, you know, there might be those types of women. There might be the kind of young, it's not about age, but you might have sort of, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, so it's just thinking who are the potential groups. You can put names on it. You don't have to put names on them. It don't have to be like a finished thing, but just start to think of those potential groups based on alignment with your values, their potential lifestyle. Start to put down some notes about those groups. You know, how do they speak? So let me just bring up again quickly, and then I know we're sort of rounding up here. What I always do is so that inspired, appreciate, wear is how they use your brand. So I think the fashionistas was something like, actually the design ones were more like research by, I can't remember what it was, but like a fashionista, for example, is a lot about the sharing. It's about the share. They're going to share quite a lot. So again, when it comes to you thinking about your marketing, it helps you understand how they engage with and use you.
You've frozen.
I think we've lost Zoe. Sorry about that. But we are also coming up close to, well, we have run a little over. So really appreciate everyone attending. So sorry for the delay in getting the past videos uploaded. Have highlighted that and made that a top priority. So we'll get those uploaded by Friday and notify you all in case you've missed any. And then we will have another session next week. So, you know, make sure you all do your homework.
I'm sorry, did I just, I don't know, I carried on talking.
Oh gosh, we lost you, Zoe.
I was going on, I've gone on about all sorts. I've taught myself about customers just there.
No problem at all. It happens. I think we lost you entirely, but no worries. But thank you everyone so much for attending. Hope you all enjoyed it, and hopefully see you again. Zoe, if you want to wrap up at all, because we did lose you.
Okay, sorry. So that was just a real tiny snippet on the customer stuff. And I just want you to start to think about it. Again, mindset. Start to think about your customers in that way as groups. And the more that you can think like that, it will help you in all the process, whether it's designing your website, if that's what you do, you know, because you then have to start to think about the customer journey. So it's the customer journey, it's the customer engagement with your product, it's the customer's read of your tone of voice. So like I say, with the values thing, just start to think about it and brainstorm it. This is not like a sort of 101, but I want you to start to think about the customers and those potential groups. And based on your values, again, sort of Fee and anyone else that wasn't here, your homework's definitely to watch those. You have to listen to my voice even more, I'm sorry. And then it will help you if you're going to then come next week, which, you know, whatever, how much you find these values, I don't know, but it's, you know, it's an hour of a bit of sort of knowledge and insight that hopefully is going to help you on your journey and a bit of strengthening. So it's, you know, it's not too much time to give up to help the business. So I would say, you know, the next one will sort of do a bit more on the customer stuff, and I'm going to give you then homework to carry it on and hopefully continue to sort of strengthen what you're doing and build it. And sorry, and just one last thing, and I'm going to give you more info next week, is I obviously, if any of you do want any more one-to-one help, we do a deal on like the mentoring and business coaching. Also, I've mentioned, and I'm going to tell you about it properly at the end of the last one, is we're launching a sort of program where we are sponsoring a few brands, part sponsoring a few brands for sort of brand and PR sort of incubation. So I'll tell you about that, the sort of limited places, but it's, and we've got loads of brilliant experts like Karen Franklin and loads of good people that are doing little snippets, but it's again mindset. It's about mindset. You know, she's going to be talking about identity and stuff. I've got someone else that's talking about value systems, and it's mindset changing. Again, it's, you know, for but actually the physical PR as well. So getting you out there and sort of getting you in front of people to help sort of promote your brand. So anyway, but I'll tell you more about that next week, and they'll be sending something out about that in the next while.